Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something super practical. We're taking those everyday B1 English grammar and vocabulary rules and, actually turning them into tools you can use in real-life conversations. Let's be honest, if you've ever memorized the rules on paper but totally froze up when trying to actually speak, this explainer is exactly what you need. We're going to make these concepts visual, logical, and literally unforgettable. Okay, so here's our quick roadmap for today. We're going to cover asking the right questions, talking about the past, sounding way more natural, and then finishing up with your next steps for fluency. Easy, right? Let's jump in. All right, kicking things off with our first section. We're looking at how to ask the perfect question, specifically navigating the tricky waters of what and how. Now, here's a really common trap. So many people ask, how was the weather like? Actually, scratch that. The correct phrase is absolutely, what was the weather like? There's a little micro-tension here. You have to use what combined with like when you're asking for a description. How is usually reserved for asking about a feeling or maybe a method. Oh, and a quick tip, the word like in this question doesn't mean to enjoy at all. It's just there to complete the whole question formula. Speaking of like, have you ever struggled with knowing exactly when to use look like versus be like when you're asking about someone new? Just imagine your friend went on a blind date and you want all the juicy details. Which question do you actually ask? Well, it all boils down to this. If you ask, what does he look like? You are strictly targeting physical traits, the body, the face, the hair. So the answer would be something like, oh, he's short and has fair hair. But if you ask, what is he like? You are going straight for their actual personality, the person on the inside. Then the answer would be, he's kind, funny, and maybe a bit shy. So just keep those two distinct in your mind. Outside appearance versus inside character. Building a question in English is honestly like following a simple math formula. You really don't need to guess. You just have to align the pieces. It goes like this. You start with your question word, add a helping auxiliary verb like did, is, have, or can, then throw in your subject, and finally the main verb. A great trick is to first think of the answer you want to give, and then just choose the auxiliary verb that matches it perfectly. Like, if the answer is, yes, I can play the guitar, well, the question simply must start with that exact same matching auxiliary. Can you play the guitar? Now, let's take a quick look at the main question words. We've got why, where, what's, and how. But whose requires some really special attention. Whose is all about ownership. It asks who owns a particular thing. And the golden rule here? Whose must always, always come directly before the noun it's asking about. You wouldn't say, who is this coat? That's a classic error. You literally have to bind the noun to the question word and say, whose coat is this? Moving right along to section 2. Now that we can ask great questions, let's focus on how we actually talk about our past experiences and travels. When you're chatting about past trips, it is incredibly tempting to ask, where were you on holiday? But here's the thing. English strongly prefers using the action verb go instead of the state of be for this. So the most natural correct way to ask is, where did you go on holiday last year? And naturally, your response would be, last year I went to Spain, rather than saying I was in Spain. Okay, what's really fascinating here is how one single little word can completely change the physical location of the person you're talking about. When we use the present perfect tense for life experiences, the words gone and been are absolutely not interchangeable. If you say he has gone to Italy, you're literally telling me he packed his bags, traveled, and is currently still sitting over there in Italy. But if you say he has been to Italy, it means he acquired the awesome life experience of visiting Italy, but he has safely returned home. And hey, while we're on the topic of the present perfect, let's just clear up the ultimate battle, past simple versus present perfect. It's like a giant puzzle, but the rule is surprisingly simple. Just look at the time. If you can say exactly when an event finished, like yesterday or last weekend, you must use the past simple, like I did the homework yesterday. But if the time is completely open, meaning in your whole life up to this very moment with no finished time attached, you go with present perfect. Have you done the homework? See? Way easier than it looks. All right, section 3 already. Let's shift gears a bit and refine your vocabulary so you can sound a whole lot more natural. Have you ever known the right concept but just kind of used the slightly wrong version of the word? It happens all the time. It is absolutely crucial to choose the correct word form. Just look at this really common error. My town is very safety. Well, safety is a noun, right? It's a thing. You can't use a noun to describe another noun like town. Instead, you need the adjective form. My town is very safe. And this exact same rule applies to pairs like defer and different, or quiet and quietly. Always check with yourself. Am I describing a thing or an action? Which actually brings us to one of the most powerful secrets in all of language learning: collocations. Collocations are basically just groups of words that native speakers naturally stick together. It's like they're glued. You should really try to learn them as one complete, unbroken piece, rather than translating them word by word in your head. For instance, don't say, "we look things the same way." The whole chunk is "look at things the same way." Or we don't say, "make a good time." The chunk is "have a good time." Memorize these as single blocks of language, and it's a real game changer. Okay, check this out. Here is a surprising pronunciation fact that catches almost everyone off guard. In the word answer, the W is entirely 100% silent. No way around it. You pronounce it answer. Never ever say answer. What's kind of funny is that the W is pronounced in similar looking words like word and world. So this quirky little rule is specifically just for the word answer. Finally, we've made it to section 4. We've covered a ton of ground, so how do we practically lock all this in? So here is your action plan. First off, actively test yourself. Do the worksheet that comes with this and check your memory. But the second, and honestly arguably the most fun step here, is to just sit back and watch a sitcom episode, something great like Modern Family, with subtitles on. The goal isn't some rigid, boring study session. The goal is to relax and let your brain passively absorb these correct forms and collocations as they're used naturally. That rhythm is exactly how your brain absorbs language natively. And finally, of course, always bring any fresh questions to your next lesson. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a direct challenge. Take a second and visualize your very next English conversation. Maybe it's a meeting at work tomorrow or just a casual chat with a friend. Which of these exact tips are you going to confidently try out first? Are you going to correctly ask, "what is he like?" Or maybe boldly use a collocation like "go for a run"? Pick one, commit to it, and use it. Thanks so much for hanging out and learning with me today, and I'll see you in the next explainer.